Call the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. I'd like to welcome all those who are with us here this evening and all those watching us at home. Thank you for taking an interest in your government. This time, I'd like to introduce the Reverend Daniel Cook, pastor of Sanctuary of Wilmington, for the invocation, and ask that everyone remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards. Reverend, welcome.
Let us pray. God, you're awesome, and before we ask you for anything, we thank you for everything. God, we say thank you for our city, and God, for all of our elected officials. Lord, we thank you, Lord, for your goodness to each and every one of us and everyone represented here tonight. God, we thank you for them. Now, Lord, we ask you, Lord, that you would meet with us tonight, be with us, give us wisdom, Lord, as we follow your lead. And I just pray, Lord, a special blessing on every person here. Lord, all of those elected officials, God, I pray, Lord, that you would just bless them with your favor and your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have two presentations this evening. The first presentation is a proclamation naming October as Dyslexia Awareness Month. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Susan Harrell of the Hill School of Wilmington, if she'll meet me at the front. Proclamation reads, whereas dyslexia is a language-based learning disability that affects approximately 1 in 5 people, regardless of race, gender, age, or socioeconomic status. Whereas the neurological in origin, dyslexia affects the way the brain processes information and is characterized by difficulties with reading, writing, and spelling despite normal intelligence. And whereas those with dyslexia benefit greatly from specialized assistance from highly trained teachers, multisensory learning programs, and individualized instructions, whereas early identification, alternative instruction, and extra support from friends, family, and teachers can contribute to the success dyslexic students enjoy in classroom, in life, and later on in employment. Now, therefore, I, Bill Saffo, on behalf of the Wilmington City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Dyslexia Awareness Month. And I just want to say thank you for all your work there at the Hill School, Susan, for all the years that you've been there, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to raise awareness about this very important aspect of education, and thank you for your support, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next proclamation is named in October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and at this time I'd like to recognize Caitlin Harrison of the Domestic Violence Center. Caitlin here. City of Wilmington, North Carolina proclamation reads, whereas domestic violence transcends all ethnic, racial, gender, and socioeconomic boundaries, weakening the very core of our community, and whereas many persons throughout Wilmington, North Carolina, and the United States find themselves in abusive relationships and need to find a safe and empowering environment, and whereas the effects of domestic violence are far-reaching and have lasting implications on the well-being and security of individuals, families, and the criminal justice systems, and our community as a whole. And whereas Domestic Violence Shelter and Services Incorporated provides emergency crisis intervention, including shelter and ongoing support services in Wilmington, North Carolina for victims and survivors of domestic violence. And whereas 1,305 adults and 138 children receive direct services such as court accompaniment, advocacy, empowerment groups, and counseling, including 129 adults and 110 children who received emergency shelter through Domestic Violence Shelter and Services Incorporated in the year 2022. Now therefore, I, Bill Safford, Mayor of the City of Wilmington, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim October 2023 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Wilmington and urge all citizens to enhance their efforts to work together to address the problem of domestic violence. This year's theme, Stronger Together, serves as a call to action to citizens of Wilmington, North Carolina, to encourage, support, and empower one another to live lives free from violence. And I just want to say, on behalf of the citizens and the City Council, thank you for all the great work that you folks do at the Domestic Violence Shelter.
For 37 years, Domestic Violence Shelter and Services has served Wilmington with emergency and supportive services for survivors. Without the support of friends like our friends at the city, we would not be able to do any of those things. And with your support, we are able to work towards our mission of working towards the elimination of domestic violence as a whole. As we always say at Domestic Violence Shelter and Services, we hope to work ourselves out of the job. So thank you so much for all of your support.
Great. Next item of business is our consent agenda, items 1 through 7. Are there any items that any council member would like to hear separately?
I think I want C2 pulled.
C2? Anybody else?
Did you say C2 and C4, or did you just say?
I said C2.
C2? Anybody else?
C4, but it's, my comments are going to be to C4 and C5, but.
C4 and C5? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Yeah. Make a motion to approve items C1 through C7, excluding C2, C4, and C5. We have a motion by Councilman Reinbach, second by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Kevin Spears. Mr. Spears?
So I had a question about C2, Mary, and
Yes, sir.
used to normally saying this to Tony, but I'm looking at C2 and I understand the intent, but my question is, for the terms, for the next 3 years where we have temporary workers. So clearly, whomever that uses this staffing service that works for the city, they're looking for the duration of their assignment. At some point, do we not look to transition them into working for the city?
I'll ask the staff, either Amy Beatty or Dave Mays, to come forward in those departments to answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Spears, you bring up a great point, and actually, a lot of folks that come through the temporary agency do end up becoming employees. Our experience is more on the RTS side, and we have both workers and drivers that end up, we end up recruiting people that become workers and or drivers for us. So yes, that is something that does happen. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen. And so it's a tool for us to be able to recruit.
But it seems like this mechanism would get us closer to our goal of filling those gaps that we have in these departments. But I've been here for nearly 4 years now, and we keep having these open positions in these areas of the city, and so it just makes me question. If a person if they're looking to be employed temporarily in these positions, it's like, why are we not finishing the deal? I think we should be able to, especially if they're looking for work. This line of work with this company is like a no-brainer.
Sometimes there are circumstances about individuals that may prohibit them from actually applying or qualifying to become a full-time employee. But this gives them an opportunity to be able to work and receive a paycheck.
and I understand that, but there's, you know, there's also the other side of the coin that I always focus on too. You know, we pretty much set the standard for what happens around here, and we know about the violence and in certain backgrounds, but, you know, we do have an end goal that we're trying to get to, so I think we should look to definitely see what we can do with our policy where we can have a more solid departments as it relates to where we're hiring temporarily, especially for 3 years. I mean, that's it, the way I looked at it is like we're not looking to permanently fill these positions. If we're going to have a contract for at least 3 years, for the next 3 years, it doesn't look like we want to actually fill these positions.
Understand your perspective. It's a value that we saw, and we've been doing this specifically in RTS for probably over 10 years. With our primarily our use in RTS is on the back of the truck. And when we have folks that are either out sick, vacation, workers' comp, or FMLA, and they're not available, this service gives us the ability to flex within that pool of employees. Sometimes it might be 10 people, sometimes it might be 20. It just depends on the day. And it also depends on the availability of the,
Right.
of the temporary employee, so.
I totally understand, and I know many may not be convinced of this, but when I was a teenager, I was on the back of that truck one time doing the landscaping stuff, and I figured out that wasn't for me. I needed to use my brain. So, but I get it. So I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying that maybe we should broaden our horizons just a little bit so we can get to the end goal of what we want to do.
Yes, sir, understood.
Mr.
Thank you.
Rivenbark?
Dave, is this contract in the event that the city should be fully staffed? How does that affect their contract?
Yes, we would still have a need for temporary employees. Yes, even if we were fully staffed.
How can you be fully staffed if you still need employees?
So the way we're staffed in RTS, in order to run routes, we need so many people driving trucks, and we need so many people on the back of trucks. We are not fully staffed to fully staff all those trucks that need to run every day. We do that through this contract.
Okay.
So every single day at our RTS operation, we have temporary employees coming in every single day.
Okay.
And it's as few as 10 or as many as 20, 25.
Good answer. I knew you'd know, I just didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
The other thing, I made some comments yesterday morning about this, and and they were answered very clearly. I understand and I get it. And I'm not looking for a loophole, but it occurred to me after the meeting yesterday, or after the agenda briefing yesterday, I was looking back over it, and something that used to be quite prevalent in our contracts, particularly contracts similar to this, was the credit or the additional scoring that was given to minority business enterprise. And I don't see that in this, and I haven't seen it in a time where we're awarding these contracts. Is that something that's just not in vogue anymore, or is that something that was we just hadn't done it in a while? And
I probably have to defer either to our purchasing manager or our finance director to see
Okay.
how that's worked into our
do that.
contracts.
Let's do that right now. Are they here?
Well, Ms. Moretti is here.
Mr. Moretti's here.
I can tell you that it's not something that has been ignored. Whether or not it was in this contract, I fully recognize that it was not. So understand, but I do understand your point.
Good evening, Mr. Rivenbark. We do include that in our construction contracts, and that's what we have to report to the state. We are working on an MWBE program to look at a disparity study, to look at our percentage of MB businesses that apply for any of our projects and service agreements, and that's something that we'll be working on over this next year to expand that program. But right now, we do include that in our construction contracts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Anybody else?
I make a motion to approve C2.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. This time I'd like to recognize Councilmember Waddell. We'll be speaking about items C4 and C5.
Yep. Ms. Viggy, I don't know who I need to speak with. I have kind of some overall general questions about the process of replacing vehicles via the Fleet Replacement Fund, and then I have some more specific questions with regards to what we're replacing within the police department and why. So we can go.
I'll call on John Fortune, our fleet manager, who can help you out.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, thanks. So first, just kind of general process of replacing vehicles within the city's fleet replacement fund. I mean, do we have a percentage or a general idea of typically does the Wilmington Police Department get a set amount within that fleet replacement fund as well as a few other departments? And if so, do you know generally what that breakdown might be?
Yes, each year a replacement list is submitted with the budget, and council approves that for the scheduled replacement. And certain vehicles are scheduled for different years, so we know what's coming up.
Do you happen to know what the total number of vehicles that would be needed for the Wilmington Police Department to be at full force? How many actual like automobiles they would need?
Not right offhand, but I can get you that information.
Yeah, I realize that's a pretty specific question, but that, and then do we know what typically what the mileage amounts on the vehicles that these purchases for C4 and C5, these 15 vehicles, what the mileage amounts for the vehicles that are being replaced are currently? So if we're retiring vehicles, what are that?
So typically, for SUVs and pickups, it's 8 years of age, and between 90 and 100,000 miles, that's where we get the best resale on the vehicles when we surplus them. So the 4 specific ones that you're speaking about are just over 100,000 miles.
Well, it's 15 total.
And the pickup trucks, those are all over 100,000 miles as well.
So those are replacing existing pickup trucks?
No, they're replacing a mixture of vehicles, but these are the only ones that are able to be purchased currently.
Right now?
Right now, yes.
So are the vehicles that are the 11 that are being replaced, the pickup trucks, I mean, do we have dire need? Are we well at that 100,000 mile limit?
Yes, we are starting to get to that point with COVID and our inability to order vehicles regularly for the past couple of years. It's really starting to show their age.
So I did pull, I just was curious on this and how the fleet replacement fund worked. And so I pulled, we got from January 2023 to now, and you may have provided me this information.
I did.
20 Dodge Chargers for WPD.
Correct.
2 Dodge Rams for WPD, and then 15 that we would be approving today, so 38 vehicles. That's something that we can basically
That's
anticipate
typical,
year over
yes.
year?
Yes.
Okay. And then, see if I had any other questions. And then again, the vehicle types that are being replaced are not trucks.
No, they're not all trucks. There may be one of them that is, but the rest of them are a mixture. But the Dodge Charger is not being made anymore. With the strike that's happening now, I'm hearing that fiscal '24 vehicles are probably not going to get built.
And this is not my job to run the police department, but
Right.
Are we seeing a shift to trucks in other
Yes.
in other municipalities?
So the available vehicles that we can get that are pursuit rated are the F-150, this Chevy Silverado, the Ford Interceptor, and the Chevy Tahoe. The Chevy Tahoe you can't get right now. The Ford Interceptor is on the line of not being able to be ordered. The Silverados you cannot order currently. These just happen to be some canceled orders that I found and were able to obtain. And then the Ford police rated package, I can't order right now, but it should be opening up in the next week or two.
And then finally, and I appreciate you kind of enlightening me on this, but finally, the price is negligible between the
Between those, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
They're all very close to each other, within a couple $1,000.
Okay.
And
Thank
all
you.
of these are off of state contract or the Sheriff's Association.
Understood.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just a follow-up, so we understand that these vehicles, when they become available, that's when you go after them, right?
Typically,
hard.
we order them and we wait for them to be built. We order a place in line and wait for them to be built and delivered. We've had a lot of vehicles canceled that I've gotten in line for. They just didn't have the parts or didn't have the vehicles or staff to do them. So when we've been able to find vehicles that are available that other municipalities couldn't buy, we've taken advantage of that.
Good idea. Okay, thank you.
So just repeat what you said about the strike. We're talking about no vehicles for 2024?
There's potential. There's potential.
But we have needs.
Correct. Correct. And that's, a lot of us fleet managers are sweating.
And I
right
know
now.
it's un-American to hire, to take a foreign vehicle, make it, I guess, a Toyota or something.
I've bought, recently I've bought 2 departments some Toyotas because that's what I could get my hands on.
Oh, wow. Okay. Mr. Spears?
Jonathan, answer this question for me.
Sure.
The ability to get a truck is contingent upon what?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
So not everyone will just get a truck because trucks are available.
No, not everybody. They'll be assigned job specific.
Okay.
So if they're part of the mobile command unit and they need to pull trailers, that person's going to get assigned that vehicle.
Right.
It's just not going to be given to anybody.
Right, so no rookies in new trucks.
No.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Is that it?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have a
C4.
motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information. We have one speaker that has signed up to speak with us this evening, Mr. Douglas Springer, that will be speaking to us about parking restrictions.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. C5 was also pulled that you need to take a vote.
I move to approve C5.
I'm sorry. And we have a motion by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously, C4 and C5. Brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information. Mr. Douglas Springer will be speaking to us about parking restrictions. Ms. Springer, welcome. You'll be allocated 5 minutes, and the clerk will be allocating the time. Thank you, Ms. Springer.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor Saffo, Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, and the rest of the council here. And it's also a special thanks to the city management team over here. If I haven't met you, my name is Doug Springer. I'm a small business owner on Wilmington Water Tours, also own a condominium downtown. But I'm here to speak to you about the latest parking restrictions. And also, I think I'm representing really the bulk of the small business owners in the Chandler's Wharf district. I think you saw the petition that they all signed. So I kind of want to take you through some of that. So basically, and because I really have 20 minutes to 2 hours of stuff to cover, I gave you the presentations, so hopefully you can review those afterwards. But you know, the expansion of the last section that was rolled out is a single block, but the impact is absolutely tremendous. But I really truly feel that the city council, that you were given a long presentation, but it really didn't give you enough to make a wise decision and ask those questions that you guys asked so well, the whys. Why are we doing this? And I put that in there in case I don't get to the end. But as you know, the overall goal of the staff in presenting to you should really to be presenting both sides and give you all that information. I really don't feel, and we don't feel, that that was done in this case. There was no chance for public input. It wasn't solicited. When I asked for it, I was asked I could give a 3-minute presentation. And only one side of the story was presented. And I understand that. I was on the parking advisory board for, I think, 5 years, you know, and I get it. People are sitting in there, they're in your ear, talking to you, and you form friendships, and you're trying to help them. And I believe that the staff was well intended, But, you know, one of the comments that really stood out when the gentleman gave his presentation, I think it was his first presentation, he said, "I'm proud to represent the interest of the citizens, the 12 citizens." And that's really what he was promoting to you. And he was doing it, you know, really thinking that he was doing the right thing. But regardless of that, if you aren't given both sides and, you know, all the concerns and issues, it's really, you can't ask those questions you ask so well, like why, you know? But the reasons they gave you, why they were expanding this, was really pretty simple. They said that it was being more utilized by restaurant users, people going to the bar, the convenience, the story about a person had to carry their groceries 2 blocks, you know, to their house, speeding, and then really very difficult to back out into the roads. And Mr. Rivenbach, you were the only one that asked a question, and like I always say, you ask the why questions. I call people that ask why, the wise bid, you know? And you saw, I think your instincts went up. When you saw the restrictions ended at 3 a.m., you said, why? Well, the gentleman gave you an answer that wasn't correct. The reason, he basically said, well, that's when our contract ends, that's when our staff goes home, enforcement isn't there. That's not the reason. The reason you have these 9 to 3 a.m. restrictions is it's a way to close down a parking space for 24 hours. And if you do that, and intentionally do that, then it's like the city is leasing that property to an individual. And as you know, if you lease or sell property, it's another whole ballgame. You have to have fair value, you know, have to do those analysis. So that's what my grandfather used to call a flim-flam, when you show one thing, but it's really representing something else. You're actually leasing this out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And due process is required when you do that. The staff's legal rationale was that there was a vote by the residents, and that's true. 2/3, you know, the residents said they wanted this, but why wouldn't they? You know, it provides 12 residents exclusive use of the on-street parking for $40 a year. Not a day, not a week, not a month, a year for a $30,000 parking place, okay? Would you vote for that? I sure would. And then the random survey. If you do the random survey, then we have the basis to do this. And I could take you through that, but there's a lot of history there. I spent almost 2 hours with the deputy city manager over here, taking her through the rationale, where that survey came from, and why it must be done. One thing, though, the simple thing is, it has to be a random survey, and that's directed by the U.S. Supreme Court. We share, believe me, and we really like this. You know, we're so unique here in this town. We've got a great relationship between the businesses, the employees, the residents, you know. We're basically like their ambassadors up there, employees picking up trash when they come through there, their relationships. That's why you saw that almost 3 people on that one block did not vote in favor of this. That's huge out of 12 people. But we agree, there's a speeding problem. It's dangerous for them to enter and back into those driveways, and the parking density is too great. And we have some solutions for that, proposed solutions for you, if I have time to get there. So what wasn't presented to you? First of all, a complete disregard for the safety of our employees, our customers, and our taxpayers. This is the last place that is within walking distance to Chandler's Wharf. That's it. And we invest in parking, we do ride sharing, we do everything possible. These 3 blocks, there's 2 more to go. They're the next 2 to go. It's the last vestibule of parking. And you remember the tragedy of Joshua. Remember that? He was killed right there, stabbed, brutally killed, a community college student. And you know, these kids, these employees, they're carrying tips. They're carrying cash from Chandler's Wharf, okay, to wherever they have to go. If they have to walk through town at midnight to a parking deck, somebody's going to get hurt. That is my main concern. That is public safety. That is really scary, and I don't want that on mine. It's a small business killer. You're really killing us. You know, we went through 2 hurricanes. We went through the pandemic. Over 50% of the businesses in Chandler's Wharf went under, and this is a killer. Can you imagine hiring an employee and say, guess what? Yeah, we're going to have a police escort come down and escort to your car because you've got to walk for a mile when you get off work. You know, this is it. This is the parking. And I could talk about that forever. The other thing is that really got me and actually kind of got my dander up was the last time they rolled this out in, what was it, 2018? You know, it was a surprise to the business owners. And I think I talked to you, Mayor Saffo, about that. And I had a letter written, you know, and basically was going to stand up and do this kind of presentation as well. Well, I stood there and negotiated with Chance Dunbar right there on the corner because they made a mistake and they rolled it out. They put signage up all on South Front Street, and it was just like hit everybody upside the head. And I said, look, we're not going to fight you on this if you will do everything you can to keep this for us. It's the last vestibule of parking. It was basically, in my opinion, a handshake agreement. And so that really set me off when I saw that. And just, you know, when I was on the Parking Advisory Committee, there were really two things that I think we got done. One, we really fought to get these intelligent meters in place and do away with all the 1 hour parking. That was kind of the standard downtown. The other one was we finally got the advisory board to advise Betty Gurganis that it was not feasible or safe for employees to use the Market Street deck and walk all the way from Chandler's Wharf. We all went and walked it, and we all agreed. But, you know, that intellectual property is lost with turnover and new people. If you're not familiar with this area that we're talking about, are you? You know, this is the 300 South Front Street. It was called Society's Hill. It's some of the most beautiful, biggest mansions in the downtown residential district. And also, I got to tell you, some of the best people live there. They're our friends. They're good people. But if you look, this thing about, you know, walking with groceries, if you look, you know, they have beautiful driveways. Some of them go all the way over to 2nd Street and exit on 2nd Street. It's not that they don't have driveways. It's just that it's hard to get in and out of some of the narrow ones. That's why that side of the street over there, they all did not want this restriction until it was brought to them as an issue around speeding, and they got them to sign on to it. So it's not that need. Just, you know, as far as the money, these are my calculations. I urge you to do your own. But basically, in that one block, we've given away about $1 million worth of parking. In the 10 blocks that have already been given out through the residential parking program, you're approaching $9 million. And that's just done because a survey was passed, okay, without presenting both sides to you. Now, this is the result. This is a picture I took after they implemented it. Instead, it's being used by 5 people now. One gentleman has his car, his collector's car out there, he keeps covered up. It was being used by 50 to 100 people on a weekly basis. So that is kind of the end result. And if you look at that, do you think that's going to reduce speeding? So the other thing about the residential parking program that really I think needs to be looked at is how they're being used. For $50 a year, you can get as many as you want. You know, buy them up. Some are being used by residents. They're buying them for their employees, for the people that do their yard work, for the people that clean their houses, you know, for all of their employees. And now we're seeing them used for their renters, short-term and long-term, apartments. And then this is a picture of the next block to go, condos coming in. And they'll be given parking places.
Doug,
I know, am I running out of time?
Yeah, I mean, you've already gone over time, but
I'm
real quick,
sorry.
I just want to ask a question. You weren't aware of this in any way, shape, or form?
No.
Nobody informed you?
No,
Let me ask you a question.
let me know.
When did you find out about this? After we voted on it?
We found out it when it was in the paper.
Okay.
Yeah. But real quick, and I will really try to speed up. I'm so sorry, but you know, there's so much to cover here. But that random survey, just so you understand the basis of it, what that was, it started in Arlington, Virginia. And there was a citizen who had the concerns of, you know, his 14th Amendment constitutional right of fair use of property. And he won. He went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Virginia and won. And then, because Arlington was out of compliance as far as air quality, EPA got involved, and they said, we're going to give you a metric where you can use it to enforce air quality, and they gave him this survey to do. And that would allow people to eventually be driven to public transportation. And then it spread across the parking community. But anyway, the random survey is absolutely required. But let me get down to this real quick. So what happened here is that when they did the survey this time, and this really just it really caught me. They failed the first time, and they didn't withdraw the permit or the application. They let it stay active. They went and informed the citizens they were going to do it again. And the citizens told me they moved their cars into their driveways. Some of them still have out-of-state license. They moved them on the streets to simulate, residents who weren't there. And I approached the staff and I said, my gosh, I said, do you think that was ethical? It was complete silence. And finally the answer was, that's how we always do it. And to me, I really struggle with that. And you know what I finally came to was that, and I know you see this when you get newer people, they understand the what. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to go do a survey. I'm supposed to do, the petition. They don't understand the why. They did not understand the why, that it was mandated, it was for controlling air pollution, and they just missed that totally. And I'm trying to get through this as quick as I can. I do apologize, but what I'm asking and what the business owners are asking, what the employees are asking, the employees' parents are asking, is first of all, let's table this. Let's withdraw that parking restriction on that block for now, okay? And the reason I'm saying that, there are definite concerns over public safety. That is undeniable. The application process was flawed. It was extended. What is that all about? Wait, we'll do it again? And then the survey was completely invalid. There's no legal premise, even if they were trying to control air pollution, to implement this phase of the parking restrictions. And then, in answer to your question, take a close look at that. Do your research. This thing of implementing a 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. parking restriction, you are, by default, taking that 24 hours a day from the public domain. You're leasing that for $40 a year. There was lack of public input into the decision. There was lack of consideration as to the impact to small business. And the implementation will not address their core concerns. It's not going to fix speeding. It's not going to fix density, and it's not going to fix the driveway
Doug,
entrances.
we're going to have to wrap it up, but I do have a question.
And I do apologize.
Kevin,
Yes.
I'm sorry, did you have a question, Kevin?
I do have a question, sir. You did something that normally makes my antennas go up, and it seems like you were trying to fearmonger a little bit when you spoke of the Joshua Proti situation, and you said that he had gotten stabbed, right?
Yes, sir.
He didn't. He got shot.
Well, I'll tell you,
But no,
I may be, but I have children.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I'm not done yet. And that was how long ago? You know how long ago that was?
That was like, what was that, like 8 years, maybe 9, something like that? It's
2012,
yeah,
2013.
right.
You heard of any more instances of?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In the Parking Advisory Committee, I had an officer in there. There was 2 stabbings and 1 shooting this past month.
Right.
So it hasn't gone away, okay?
Right. But I mean,
But that one was so tragic and so visible, it's people know about it. They can relate to it, okay? That's why I brought that
You
up.
used it as a mechanism to generate fear for public safety, right?
Absolutely not.
But what was the purpose of using it?
What was the purpose of using it?
Yes.
To make a point.
What was the point that you made?
The point is it's going to happen again if you allow it to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Haynes?
Just to follow up on what Kevin said, Doug, this is certainly comprehensive, and I think we all need to, sit down. We've read your emails, but we need
Okay.
to sit
Well,
down
thank
and
you.
really look this over. A couple of things I want to say and follow up on Kevin. When Josh was held up for a Subway sandwich and the change he had in his pocket, and he was murdered, he was on a public sidewalk next to a public parking space. So let's
right.
not say that it's totally unsafe and all of that. I get what you're saying, and I'm
Yes.
not going to argue with you,
Sure.
and you're not going to argue with me.
No, it was
Okay?
unlit at that
Okay?
time, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other thing is to be somewhat disparaging about the staff of Chance Dunbar. my experience downtown with him, and I do live downtown, is that he is probably one of the finest employees that we have. And I think downtown has been vastly improved under his watch downtown, so I don't appreciate it.
Okay, and I take that, I understand that, and like I said, I really wrestled with it, and I think it was just that thing of not understanding the why. I think he's very sincere. I've asked, I think he does, I agree with you. I think he's a great employee, and you know, he's trying to do the right thing, okay? And we all, you know, we all learn, so.
Doug, we got Councilman Reinbart.
I don't think you came here to browbeat Chance Dunbar.
No, not at all.
But I do get what you're saying about the why. For somebody to have something affect their business, not just yours, but everything down there, and find out about it in the newspaper, that doesn't fly with me. They should be more open, and some of the points you've made are very valid. And I appreciate this. We need to go through it and maybe address it again. This is another thing I'm going to say. When people move, it's like somebody moves next to the airport, and next damn thing you want to know, they want to get the planes landing somewhere else or flying somewhere else. When people move on streets like this, I mean, that street's been like that since I was born here. That's been a long time. It hasn't changed. There's more people. But I mean, you know what you're getting. So.
Well, you know, I really think we have a very special city here. And I think you all know that. I mean, we love it. That we've just completed our 14th year on the river, really counting Lorelei, almost 20 now. But we have such an opportunity here where the citizens can work with the residential area and the business owners, given the chance. And, you know, I really think one of the things that's going to, and if you look at my recommendations, I really think that comes from, I went up and sat down and talked to Bruce and Jody about this and just trying to understand what their real concerns were. And I think there's a solution. The deal is that it's really hard not to get stovepiped, where you have like one, and then it falls on somebody like Chance, where he's doing everything that he's got in his tool bag to do. But he can't look at some of the traffic considerations and some of the side of, all those things. So it's really hard to come up with that solution. But I think you can do it. And so, I think we can reduce the density by moving some of the striping back from those driveways. We can do a lot of things, but this is putting us in a really tough situation right now.
I'm going to go, Councilman Anderson, you have a comment?
Well, my daughter worked at the brewery for a summer, and my wife and I could not go to sleep every night till she got home. So I feel you on that, and that's something, I know we have that rooftop program, but we need to be thinking about that in all our planning. And if our rules are the survey was supposed to be random and it wasn't, that concerns me. I got a call from someone over in the Soda Pop district, and the same thing. He's wanting to know how many spaces do you get per house. I guess we need to look into that. If there's 3 people on a lease, 3, or if there's, I don't know what it looks like. But we just hired a new parking management company. Maybe we get we certainly should consult them and see what kind of experience they have, some ideas, because I see your point. That parking space really belongs to every citizen in this whole city, but yet it's $40 for those to reserve it. So we need to look at it, and I appreciate you bringing it to us.
Well, I will say this, and Doug, we got to close it up here because it's public information.
Yes.
But I do think we do need to review just the process, because I know this happened a couple of years ago with the Children's Museum when we restricted some parking there. The Children's Museum found out about it later. It affected their overall business. I always love to have a debate. I love to hear both sides of a commentary about any issue. I think it's important, and usually we come to some sort of a compromise, and we can figure it out. But I do think that our process needs to be a little bit more open in respect to make sure that everybody that is going to be impacted by this is notified, including the business owners that are down there, whether they live in the city or not, so that when we do have a public hearing about these kinds of things, that we hear from both sides. So,
and that's really what we're asking for, Mayor. It really is. And once again, I don't want to belittle anybody or talk bad about any employee or anybody. I have the highest respect for city council, for everything that you folks do, everything. And like the city management team over here, we've seen a remarkable change. The employees are positive now, and we're seeing these projects getting done. So, you know, my hat's off to them too. So I'm trying to be constructive, but, you know, there were some things that just kind of hit us in the face on this one. So,
Okay.
thank
sir.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Our next item of business is public hearings, and our first item of business is ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city to rezone property containing 5.82 acres of land located at 6120 Oleander Drive from CBCD Community Business Conditional District to ONI CD Office and Institutional Conditional District for mixed-use development consisting of 178 dwelling units and 20,700 square feet of office and commercial space. At this time, I'd like to recognize our Deputy City Manager, Mary Vigu. Mary?
I would invite Nicole Smith, our city planner, to come forward on this item.
Good evening. It is my understanding that the applicant, Mr. Sam Frank, would like to request a continuance, so I would like to turn it over to him, please.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman. My name is Sam Frank. I represent the applicant here, and Ms. Smith's representation is accurate. We'd like to request a continuance of this matter. Understand, based on consultation with the City Attorney's Office, that in so doing, we need to request a continuance to January, this being an election year, and you not being able to hear conditional zoning matters in November and December. I believe the date certain for the meeting in January is January 9th, but I'd be grateful if someone could check me on that.
Can someone check on that for us? Is it January 9th? Is it date certain?
I defer to Madam Clerk. I don't know if we have those dates set yet, but it's either the 2nd or the 9th.
Those dates haven't been set yet, but you could say the first meeting in January.
Yes, we could just say the first meeting in January, and whichever
The first meeting in January of 2024. Okay, very good.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And we have a motion to continue that item by Councilmember Reinbach, second by Councilmember Waddell. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Frank. That brings us to our next item of business, which is PH number 2, which is an ordinance modifying the existing CSCD Commercial Services Conditional District located at 3715 Carolina Beach Road for an expansion of an existing automobile repair and services establishment and adding a new 9,000 square foot general business services building and a new 6,750 square foot indoor storage facility. I'd like to recognize our Deputy City Manager, Mary Vigu, for staff presentation.
Nicole Smith, Senior Planner, will overview this item for council.
Very good.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. The proposal before you this evening includes one parcel containing approximately 2.045 acres. The site is located north of the intersection of Carolina Beach Road and Independence Boulevard. This map provides context and highlights the site location. To the right of the slide are images of the subject site's existing conditions. The site is currently developed with a vehicle repair and service land use. These are photos of the existing conditions from adjacent roadways. This slide illustrates the existing development pattern within the vicinity. Commercial uses are located to the north, detached single-family to the south, civic and institutional use to the west, and vacant land to the east. The request this evening is to modify the existing commercial services conditional district to allow for the expansion of the vehicle repair and service land use and the addition of new uses to the rear of the property. On your screen is the proposed site plan. The proposal intends to add 4,000 square feet of vehicle repair and service space for a total of 9,000 square feet, add 9,000 square feet of general business, and the addition of 6,750 square feet of indoor storage to the site. The site is located within a mixed-use place principal mixed-use center, a greenfield site as multi-use place area of opportunity, as well as along a major corridor and regional parkway on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. The plan supports areas well-suited for infill and redevelopment to be redeveloped in a way that maintains or enhances the desired character of the surrounding area. Based on the information contained in the case summary and the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, staff believes the request is reasonable and in the public interest and recommends conditional approval with the conditions outlined in your case summary. The Planning Commission did host a legislative hearing at their September meeting and unanimously recommended conditional approval as well. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
This time I'd like to recognize the applicant.
Good evening. Thank you. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I've been working with the Kennedy Automotive Group for this. They've been a successful automobile repair and services establishment in operation since 2003. The property, as Nicole pointed out, is already zoned CS. It's already zoned for all the uses that we're proposing. However, it was originally created by a special use permit back in 1996. At that time, it was limited to this building right at the front of the long tract. And it just makes sense in this time and age to take advantage of the land that is there and give it a little bit of extra value in addition to expanding the business they have. So you can see what it is existing today. What we're proposing is, as Nicole pointed out, for the additional uses. The existing establishment and those proposed are logical uses for the track location on the busy Carolina Beach Road corridor. Policies for growth and development certainly encourage continued efforts to maintain and promote our small businesses, and sustainability of the city depends on sensible infill and maximizing land use. We believe this is consistent and would hope that you'd agree with both the staff and Planning Commission decisions. Okay. Thank you.
We have a question, Mr. Anderson.
I had one of my questions was, like, in our packet, your photo, your map like this didn't have the property in the back. No, go back.
Which one?
The one you had up. I'm just saying the one in our packet did not have all the stuff in the back.
That's an old plan. That was the original plan.
Okay, so
quite a while back. Sorry.
So is this, will these be, is this all their business? It's all under their
At this point, he wants to add value to the property. He knows that these types of uses would be an advantage. So what we came up with, I mean, initially, his intent is to add the 3 bays to his establishment at the front. That's
Gotcha.
the main phase 1. But in the future, we believe that some uses at the back would make sense.
Does it trigger any stormwater at some point, Dad? All that impervious or not?
Yes, it would. We've had some soils testing done, and the plan would be for under pavement infiltration or under pavement storage, at least, in this scenario. There's a large ditch at the back between this and the Cameron properties, but the property does not drain that direction, nor is it on our property. So we'd need some easement, and that wasn't forthcoming. The drainage does go out towards Carolina Beach Road, and there is a drop inlet in the initial phase, the existing portion. And so any type of stormwater management and detention would go in that direction at overflow.
I guess, but it probably triggers with that stuff in back, not necessarily this first stage, or there's some threshold.
Yeah, there is up to 10,000 square feet of new impervious sort of permitted without a whole lot of hassle, but certainly all of the rest of the project would kick it all in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This time I open up the public hearing and ask if anybody wishes to speak on item PH2. Seeing none, are there any additional comments from council? Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council, and I will note that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement for the record.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to assign zoning to property located at 3715 Carolina Beach Road to modify an existing CS/CD Community Services conditional district for the expansion of an existing automobile repair use and the addition of a general business services building and indoor storage facility, and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request as reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would allow for the expansion of an existing business and allow for additional uses that are compatible with the area.
And that motion was made by Councilman Ravenbach, second by Councilman Barnett. Any additional comments? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. What is the wishes of council in respect to the motion to waive second reading? We have a Mayor Pro Tem Haynes has made that motion, second by Councilman Ravenbach. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH3, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 0.87 of an acre of land located at 6705 and 6711 Greenville Loop Road from R15 moderate density single dwelling district to R10 CD medium density single dwelling conditional district for a 3-lot single dwelling subdivision. At this time, I'd like to recognize our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Mary
Thank
Bigu.
you. Pat Mahoney, Associate Planner, will overview this item for council.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This is a conditional district rezoning request. The site is located on the west side of Greenville Loop Road, contains approximately 0.87 acres, and consists of 2 vacant parcels. This map shows the general vicinity surrounding the request. These are photos of the existing conditions along Greenville Loop Road. And these are photos of adjacent properties and land uses, which are primarily single-dwelling residential uses. The site is currently zoned R15 residential. It's bordered by R15 residential in all directions, and as I mentioned, single-dwelling residential uses. The applicant is proposing to rezone the properties from R15 residential to R10 conditional district for 3 residential lots. It consists of dividing these 2 single-dwelling lots into 3 single-dwelling lots, each being over 10,000 square feet in area, with an access easement providing access to that rear lot number 2 shown on your screen through a 34-foot wide private access easement. This proposed conditional rezoning request includes this lot configuration and the access easement. The site is located within a neighborhood-scale infill development area of opportunity and is also along a community parkway and loop road on the Comprehensive Plan's growth strategies map. The Comprehensive Plan promotes small lot infill development where appropriate. The proposal would provide additional housing options along a major corridor and put residents near services. Staff believes the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the recommendations of the Crate-Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is reasonable in public interest. Staff recommends conditional approval with the conditions listed in the case summary. Planning Commission also unanimously recommended conditional approval of the request at their September meeting. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Are there any questions of staff? Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
This time I'd like to recognize the applicant.
Thank you again. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of this property. The subject parcels were occupied by several mobile homes and a lot of accessory structures up until May of 2022, when it was totally vacated, cleaned up. As Pat pointed out, it is in an R15, but we're asking for basically a very small jump just for the sake of we have 2 lots and there's possibility of creating 3 out of it. As part of that creation of the 3 lots and the conditional district, one of the conditions is that everything would be accessed from just a single driveway, so that does eliminate one conflict point that could potentially have been on Greenville Loop Road. Rolina Homes is a newer business in our community. They're based in South Carolina and have started working here, and this is just some typical examples of their single-family homes. So with that, we'd appreciate your positive recommendation that this infill development where public services are already available reduces housing costs and will restore housing options and diversity, and location-efficient housing should be promoted and encouraged. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
I got a question.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah. So lot 2, tell me what you said you were doing with lot 2 again?
Lot 2, each of them will be single-family lots. It's just Lot 2 is a little more wide than deep, but all 3 of the lots will face the private drive.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, and they've got that one driveway that'll
That's correct.
take them all in that one spot.
So basically, you'll come in, you'll either turn into the garage to the right, turn into the garage to the left, or come straight forward and have a garage ahead of you on Lot 2.
Okay,
That type of layout.
all right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will now open the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on item PH3. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments? Any additional comments from council? Okay, I will close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. Also, ask that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement. So that comes down to you, Mr. Barnett, who has made the motion, second by Councilmember Spears.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to assign zoning to property located at 6705 and 6711 Greenville Loop Road from R15 Moderate Density Single Dwelling District to R10 CD Medium Density Single Dwelling Conditional District for a 3-lot single dwelling subdivision and finding to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan. Based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would allow for residential infill development that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Anderson, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item PH4, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city to rezone property containing approximately 0.567 acres of land located at 2505 South College Road from RB Regional Business and R15 Modern Density Single Dwelling District to RBCD Regional Business Conditional District for an expansion of an existing law office. At this time, I'd like to recognize our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Marion Vigu. Ms. Vigu?
Thank you, Mayor. Nicole Smith, Senior Planner, will overview this item for council.
Good evening again. The proposal includes one parcel containing approximately 0.567 of an acre. The site is located south of the intersection of South College Road and Shipyard Boulevard. This map provides context and highlights the site location. To the right of the slide are images of the subject site's existing conditions. The site is currently developed with a law office. These are photos of the existing conditions from adjacent roadways. This slide illustrates the existing development pattern within the vicinity. Commercial uses are located to the north, south, and west, with detached single dwellings to the east. The site is currently split zoned, regional business and R15 moderate density single dwelling district. The request before you this evening is to encumber the entire property with a conditional regional business district zoning. The proposed site plan is on your screen and will add 2,150 square feet of additional office space for a total of 5,175 square feet. Additionally, parking spaces and remove the split zoning that was a result of the 1964 annexation. The site is located within a regional retail center, mixed-use center, as well as along a major corridor and regional parkway and high-capacity transit route on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. The plan supports areas well-suited for infill and redevelopment to be redeveloped in a way that maintains or enhances the desired character of the surrounding area. This proposal will utilize existing utilities and a frontage road to provide visibility from the major street while limiting driveway connections. Based on the information contained in the case summary and the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, staff believes the request is reasonable and in the public interest and recommends conditional approval with the conditions outlined in the case summary. The Planning Commission hosted a legislative hearing regarding this item at their September meeting and also voted unanimously to recommend conditional approval of the request. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. The applicant is also present.
Any questions of staff? Okay, thank you. This time I'd like to recognize the applicant. Cindy, it's your big day today.
Thank you, one more time. I appreciate it. The building on this subject property was originally constructed in '74 and was used as a nightclub for many years. I'm guessing that the satellite police station being relocated there put a little bit of crimp in that. So the current owners purchased it in 2010 and really did a yeoman's job of the facelift, renovating it, and they occupy the premises with their professional offices, Michael Davenport and Scott Overholt. As Nicole pointed out, it's a split zone, and it was really interesting going back through this, is way back in the 1964 city annexation, the legal description basically just said 250 feet off of College Road's right-of-way. And so that's what created that strange line, even though the site was already developed all the way back to that residential line. So with that, the 250-foot offset, you can see, would severely limit any type of a building addition to what they've already got. So we have proposed the building addition basically up to whatever the overhead power line easement is that runs past the back of the property. And in doing so, we're actually eliminating some impervious surfaces. We're certainly improving the tax base with a good business situation, and we're now providing a 10-foot drainage easement, which is not currently across the back of the property, along with a buffer yard to those residential zoned properties behind us. With that, we believe this is logical to remove that split zone for the conforming building addition. This would be consistent with the idea of sustainable growth through sensible infill. We'd appreciate your approval. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask for anybody in the public wishes to speak on item PH4. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional commentary? Members of council, you have any additional questions? I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council, and we'll also make the comment that whoever makes the motion must read consistency statement. We have a motion by Councilman Reinbach, second by Councilmember Spears. Mr. Reinbach?
This is the second time tonight we've had an opportunity to clean up some zoning issues that go way back. I move to approve the proposed amendment to assign zoning to property located 2505 South College Road from RB Regional Business and R15 Moderate Density Single Dwelling District to RBCD Regional Business Conditional District for an expansion of an existing law office and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reason. The proposed rezoning would allow for the expansion of an existing office use and apply a consistent zoning designation across the site.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item PH5, which is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish a dwelling at 912 South 4th Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. This time I'd like to recognize our Deputy City Manager, Ms. Mary Vigu.
Our Chief Code Officer, Brian Renner, will overview this item for council.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Council. I'm Brian Renner. I'm the Chief Code Enforcement Officer. The property we're talking about right now is 912 South 4th Street. This property is 1,832 square foot, single family. It's a two-story house built in 1920. The property is vacant. The property owner, the primary owner is Ronald Gilbert McFadden, though there is some partial ownership to some other heirs in the Wright family. This is the view from South 4th Street. Our initial inspection on this property was in July of 2021. It was from one of our code enforcement officers observing the condition of the house and initiating a case. We took this to housing code hearing in November of 2022. The property owner, one of the property owners attended that hearing. We issued our order to repair or demolish on December 9th of 2022, and that order expired in June of 2023. That order had a tax value of $132,800 for the building. Our estimated cost to repair was $92,060, which puts us at 69%, which would be dilapidated by the city's minimum housing code. These are the violations that were outlined within that findings of fact. And now we'll look at some photos of the house. We have a lot of issues with the roof. Just going around the side and to the back. As we can see here, the roof is in a pretty rough shape on the back side and on the front as well. Inside the house, we have some indication of water intrusion. You can see that in that photo of the living room. And the house was undergoing a partial renovation several years ago, but all work has stopped since then. And here we can see other indications of water intrusion and growth on the inside and the rotten subfloor on the second story. This is up on the second floor. The floor system of the second story is very unstable. The roof is actually in the process of collapsing. And here we can see parts of the roof are caved in. So where we're at on this one, we haven't not had any communication with the owner since the hearing. They have not responded to citations or requests for information. What we're looking to do on this is the authority to keep the dwelling vacant and secured. We do have some indication that somebody may have been going in through the front door, so we just want to make sure that we keep this building secured so we don't have any other issues. That being said, we're looking at 90 days for the owners to repair or demolish this building, and if not, we'll look at appropriate action.
Mr. Rivenbark.
Brian, are these people local or are they out of town?
They're local.
They're local and still haven't had any back and forth communication?
That's correct.
This is my next question or thought is not related to this specifically, but to all of the ones that you bring before us. The one thing that generally causes the rapid deterioration of any house is water intrusion coming through the bad roof or whatever. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it would be fair.
Because, I mean, it's kind of a common thread through all the ones we see, and then once that gets inside, I mean, it's just it speeds everything up. So I guess what I'm driving at, is there any way that once we spot something like this, before it gets to the way the interior looks, is there any way, and this is probably a legal question, is there any way that we could do some roof work or get Warm or whoever involved that would save some of this housing stock? Because some of the stuff we see, I mean, other than the fact that they're hoarding and they've got stuff piled up in there, they have no water, no sewer, no electricity, they're still trying to live in it. But I see that time and again as the roof is what's caused the great majority of the damage to the house. And I know putting a roof on is not a small ticket item, it's expensive, but it seems to me that would, you do it and put a lien on the property, but at least it would preserve the interior of the property better. not completely. Just a thought.
Yeah, so to answer your question, our staff tries to be as proactive as they can when they see even a minor roof issue to start that conversation with the property owner. We send courtesy notices where we don't even initiate a case, and we say, hey, we saw some minor issues. Here's some resources that are available. We spend a lot of time connecting property owners with WARM, the city's rehabilitation programs for owners, and then we are in the process of rolling out the Healthy Homes program, which provides even more grant support for homeowners and even renters to get repairs. So yeah, we are active trying to prevent these issues, and right now we're cleaning up a lot of hurricane damage.
But you have to have cooperation with the owner before you do that. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir, Mr. Kevin.
So, Brian, this is one of the better houses that you've brought to us in a while. And based on the conversation that I was in last night, and also based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting, where we were willing to give a lot of money to a developer, I want to see us change directions and actually start to repair some of these homes. You know, I want to see this council go in that direction. I think that's something we can do, you know, and citizens, you know, I've heard you say, you know, we do have programs that we can direct them to, but, you know, if the option is to vacate, demolish, repair, I mean, the decision to pick one of those choices is ultimately ours, correct?
That decision is really based on the estimated cost of repair of the dwelling. That's where we talk about dilapidated versus deteriorated, the
Right.
50% threshold. So if it's over the 50% threshold, best practice says you may be looking at demolition because the general cost to repair that house is more than it's worth. And then again, with the limited budget of my office, it's much more cost effective for us to clear this. I'm definitely on board with doing repairs to properties, and that's something that we have been discussing internally. There's other programs like receivership and some other things that allow for that. But most of this, again, results in a lien and then potential foreclosure. So regardless of if we repair it, there will be a lien on the property.
Right, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think we could definitely do that, but what Charlie said, preserving the stock, and I think that's important. You know, we talked about being in the crunch of housing affordability and also overdevelopment, sorry. So yeah, but my question was that this board makes the decision of what happens. So if we decided to repair it, I mean, I understand what you're suggesting to us, but if we say, well, you know what, we do want to start saving some of these homes, we do want to repair some of these homes, that decision is ultimately ours.
That is something that we could definitely discuss because the funding would have to come from you. Yes.
Right,
Yes.
but that's what I'm saying. I mean, if we were just willing 2 weeks ago to give away almost $14 million, we can fix this home or homes. It'd be a lot cheaper. So, I mean, I want us to start thinking more so towards that. And I may not have a lot of support on that, but that's where I'm at.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it also, you got to have some agreement with the property owners. I mean, I would think, I'm just thinking out loud, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, you see this roof situation, you present them options, but those options a lot of times might be a loan or might be, you know, in other words, but there's 2 or 3 heirs. In this case, at least 3, right?
Yeah, there's some fractional ownership, yeah.
So the point is then that one person's scared to take on, you know, they can't get the signatures. They don't want to take it on alone. So you take it on loan and then the other 2 show back up and say, yeah, I want my third. I mean, it's the complications of the heir that's the biggest issue I see here. Even from the repair piece, is that not right? Let me ask it differently. If you saw this, like it was one of these homes you mentioned earlier, and WARM, is that just free? Somebody come in and or some of we have a variety of programs, so some of them are loans, some of them are discounted. I mean, what's the?
Yeah. So there's nonprofits such as WARM who do no-cost rehabilitations, repairs. The city has a variety of programs that include forgivable loans that range from a variety of major to minor. And then the Healthy Homes program is actually a grant. So those are going to be things where, like, you need a new roof, and that's something that might be accessible through that
Why do
program.
you suppose they don't take you up on it? They think you're scamming them or something?
There's a lot of factors that go into why people do certain things with their property or don't do certain things with their property, and it's really kind of a case-by-case basis. This property has a long history of within the family and with a family friend, and so there's a lot of property transfer that's happened within this history of this house. So I can't say exactly why.
What if somebody dropped by my house and I, couldn't afford it and I had a hole in my roof and they said, I'll fix it for you? I mean, it's hard to figure out, and it's not going to cost me anything why they wouldn't do it. So there's got to be some trust factor going on there too.
And there are some limitations within the program and on what risks that agency is willing to take.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
Let me chime in real quick, based off of what Neil just said. I think it's the process when you apply to get that help. You have to go back and find your great-great-great-grandmother's birth certificate and all kind of stuff and social security number, and it's a cumbersome process, and people get overwhelmed during any part of the process. I think you can ask anybody who asked to receive help after Florence. There were a lot of people whose homes were damaged, and they tried to get help, and the process was so lengthy, and you had to do so many different things that people just end up giving up. So I think if we could come up with something that was a lot less stressful, and people could get help, we would see more people participate.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. This time I'll open up the public hearing. Well, no, I need to recognize, see if the property owner is here. Is the property owner here? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on this particular item, PH5. Seeing none, are there any additional comments you've received, Madam Clerk? Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item PH6, which is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish the dwelling at 811 Walnut Street as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. Mary, I guess we're going to be talking to Brian again.
Yes, sir. Chief Code Officer Brian Renner will overview this item as well.
Okay.
Evening, Mayor Pro Tem. This next property is, and the last one that I have for you for this evening, is 811 Walnut. So this property is 682 square foot, single-story, single-family house, again, built around 1920. It is currently vacant. The property owner is Richard R. Chin and his wife, Lelaine Chin, and they are in California. I will note that we do have the contractor that has been working on this house recently here with us as well, so you'll be able to speak with him after my presentation. So this is the view from Walnut Street. The windows are a new addition. This property has been boarded up for a very long time, and we are happy to see new windows recently installed. My conversation with the contractor is that repairs are going to be swiftly underway, which is good because then we'll be able to close our case out and hopefully have another housing unit. But here we can see some issues with the roof already. This case started back in October of 2020. It was from a complaint from a neighbor. We took this to Housing Code hearing in April of 2023. Nobody attended that hearing. We issued our order in May of 2023, and that order expired in August. The tax value of that building is $34,100. Our estimated cost of rehab, $35,466, 104%, which would put this at dilapidated by the city's minimum housing code. These are the sections of the housing code that are outlined within that order to repair. So here we can see big issue right off the bat is that there is a hole in the roof up on that peak, and a lot of that metal siding is lifted. And going around, we can just see some other issues around the roof. There are issues with the front and rear porch. This would be the rear porch. Some of the siding missing, and we see the front porch on the other side. Inside, we have a lot of rodent feces throughout the building. We do have some little rat holes that go down into the crawl space. Sanitary facilities aren't maintained. There haven't been utilities here in several years. Here we can see some water intrusion coming into the bathroom through the roof. Here as well. That being said, we're looking at 90 days for the owner to repair or demolish this building. The building is currently vacant and secured, so we're looking to keep that way. The taxes are current, and we have issued citations on this as well. But as I said, the contractor who has going to be working on this project is here, so I'll let him explain any of his plans for it. But my recommendation is to move forward with the 90 days in the event that this doesn't get done. We have been managing this case since 2020 and only recently had progress.
Any questions for staff? Brian? Okay. So Brian, real quick, how much conversation you've had with the work that's being currently done, or how much conversation have you had with the owners?
We had a conversation earlier this week. It's been recent. My officer has been talking about this house for at least 3 years. And as I said, the windows are a new development, which is a good sight to see. But I do have concerns on whether or not the project will be completed, which is why I'd like to keep the 90-day timeline within our ordinance, just to have some follow-through.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, sir. This time I'd like to recognize the property owner. Is the property owner here?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Rodenbach and Councilman Spears, Brett Barnes. Pleasure to be here.
Good to see you.
On this condition of this piece of property, I took ownership of remodeling this house officially about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, the day I got it was on a Monday. The day after that, I had windows put in. Officially in the morning, the guys will start cutting the trees down in the morning at 8:30. Thursday morning, the WWM trash compactors will be setting a dumpster there. They will start doing the inside and outside simultaneously. Condition area about the roof could be done by a roofing company out of Charbon. They come and they can put the roof on. So that's the first thing we'll do is get that roof straight.
Sure.
Let's put some metal. There's 2 pieces of metal missing on the frontage. One's on the left side toward the driveway, one's on the front porch on the front. This project, Mr. Chen, I've known for 30 years. Both of them had serious issues. One, Mr. Chen had a massive heart attack. So he was in Hawaii for a while. His wife had triple bypass and had a hip replaced. So they had a lot of concerns. So I ended up talking with them now. I'm the power attorney of all their properties. So I will be working on every one that they have. So you will not see me again back down here. So if you give me that stainless stay, this house will be the newest addition to the block on Walnut Street.
I know you'll do a good job.
Gotcha.
I appreciate that. Mr. Waddell?
My question, sir, real quick.
Come on, we got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Is that, I mean, are you comfortable with that 90 days, or do you need an extension on that?
I need a little extension.
About what do you think?
I think no more than 120 days would be enough for me.
120?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rodenbach?
How you doing?
Fine, Charlie.
Now, you are the person that's having the work done.
Yes, sir.
That's great. I feel good about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
I appreciate you coming down. That's really exciting for us to see people come and take ownership. And, we'll do what we can to help you to make sure that that happens. So, thank you for coming.
Well, anytime you need me, I'm available to assist, help under some of these houses. And as you said a while ago, there are grants available.
All right, well, do this one. Do
Thank
this
you.
one. Make us proud on this one.
Thank you, sir. Okay. At this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anybody wishes to speak on item PH6.
I have a question, and it's probably to staff. Luke mentioned 120 days. What's your thought on that?
I'm not opposed to that. I think if our goal is to see the house fixed and habitable and hopefully lived in, as with many of Mr. Chin's properties, it's questionable whether or not that they're occupied. So we'd like to see this one be fixed and occupied. So again, 120 days, we can make that modification to the ordinance.
Yeah. Or if we did 90 days, would 90 days put more fire under the project, and then at the end of that 90 days, we could come and then do the extension if we need it? Is it about the same?
Generally, the process doesn't flow that way unless we're
Okay.
talking about a continuance or something.
Okay.
We're talking with Mr. Jesse on several properties, so it's not unrealistic that we won't stay on top of him
Okay.
to see 120 done. Yeah.
All right, all right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comments? Okay. All right. So we'll close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council. We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Spears.
I'd like to amend the motion to extend the time from 90 days to 120 days.
Okay. That's the motion on the floor.
Will the seconder accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Barnett, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously. Mayor Pro Tem, will you please take over for a moment?
Yes, the next order of business are our ordinances. Item 01A and 01B are companion ordinances, and I will read both of them. A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a supplemental agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept $292,080 in additional surface transportation block grant direct attributable funds with a required local match of $73,020 for the Hooker Road Multi-Use Path Project. And I'll also read 01B, although we'll vote on them separately. 01B is the ordinance making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $365,100 for the Hooker Road Multi-Use Path Project in the Streets and Sidewalks Fund. And at this time, I'll recognize our Deputy City Manager, Mary Vigue, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Staff is actually going to overview 01, 02, and 03 all at the same time because they are a similar project. And so Rachel McIntyre, who is our project manager, will overview these items. And in addition, staff will also provide an overview of the question that was asked yesterday morning associated with the pecan trees. So,
thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Before you are three resolutions authorizing the city manager to enter into supplemental agreements with NCDOT to accept additional surface transportation block grant program funds for the Hooker Road Multi-Use Path, Hinton Avenue Multi-Use Path, and Wrightsville Avenue and Greenville Avenue intersection improvements projects. In June of this year, council approved the request of additional direct attributable funds from the WMPO in the amount of $960,000, and in July, the WMPO board awarded these funds. These funds require a 20% local match of $240,000, bringing the total additional funding for the projects to $1.2 million. The required 20% local match was covered by available city funds that already existed within these three projects. These supplemental agreements will increase the overall project funding
by $365,100 for Hooker Road, $424,800 for Hinton Avenue, and $410,100 for Wrightsville Greenville. Also before you are 3 companion ordinances appropriating these funds to the projects. Staff recommends approval of these items, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, and Mike Naklicki is going to overview the trees to be removed at 154 Hinton Avenue.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Hooker-Hinton multi-use path, Wrightsville-Greenville intersection projects. As Rachel just reviewed, she went over the supplemental agreements for the additional funding, and it was related to the overall project scope here. You're all familiar with the 8-foot wide multi-use path we're going to be putting on Hooker Road, another 8-foot wide multi-use path on Hinton Avenue, and the Wrightsville-Greenville intersection improvements and sidewalks and bike lanes going down Greenville Ave. So it's my understanding that there's been a handful of questions recently as it relates to the Hinton Avenue multi-use path, particularly as it relates to a property at the corner approaching Greenville Ave, 154 Hinton Avenue. What you see in front of you here is a snip from the engineering plans that show that property. The red shaded areas is generally the limits of grading, that the area of disturbance for the new curb line, the multi-use path, and also the driveway tie-ins. What you also see there is a blue highlighted line. That is the storm pipe that needs to be installed along that corridor to deal with the runoff associated with the new curb and gutter for the road, and also the the multi-use path. There are also 6 yellow dots there. Those are the locations of some of the trees in question. You can see that they're right along the back edge of that multi-use path. I have some other graphics that'll help zoom in so you can see the impacts there. This section that you're seeing of the trail along Hinton Avenue is about 400 feet of the total 2,000 linear feet down that corridor. Here's another graphic that was put together that overlays the critical root zone of these trees. The radius, the dotted circles that you see around each tree there, or tree location, is the critical root zone, and that is identified for about every 1 inch of diameter of the caliper of the tree. It's about 1 foot of radius for the critical root zone. The reddish hatching that you see there is the area of the roots that will be impacted by the storm pipe that I just talked about, and also the trail that'll be installed there. As a rule of thumb, typically if you impact 30% or more of that critical root zone, you can expect that that tree most likely will not survive. And I know the lettering is kind of small here, but every one of those trees has impacts of 30% or more of their root zones. Every tree that's out there that you see along that section is at least 30% or more. The critical root zone is impacted by this project.
Only because of the install of the stormwater pipe.
Yes, some of the surface roots will be affected by some of the grading of the trail and all that, but yes, the majority of it is the stormwater pipe.
Okay. Because we plant trees in plazas this wide that hell, all of it is impacted. So that doesn't fly with me. It's the install of the stormwater pipe for a 10-foot, I mean, you're going to have curb.
Yeah.
So
some of the challenge with the path, though, too, is because we have to add the curb and gutter, it builds up that grade, and you're putting a lot of soil and stone over the top of those roots. I think most arborists have told me over the years, you start piling soil and stone on top of root systems, it will affect the trees as well.
All right, sir. Thank you.
So here's another image that if you're actually walking down Hinton Avenue, this is one of the pecan trees that's right on the corner, a 28-inch pecan. To the right there, you can see the image of the existing road, one lane going down to Michelle Drive, the other one coming up to Greenville Ave. You can see the right-of-way line just to the left of the trees, so those trees are in our current right-of-way, and the existing grade. When I switch to the next slide here, you're going to see the proposed cross-section. So the area in red is that critical root zone that we talked about. You can see the path as designed, overlaid over it with the 2-foot curb and gutter, and also the 8-foot wide multi-use path, and the storm drain pipe below it. So and you can see basically with the narrow corridor we have there, that path is right on top of the tree trunk.
Mike, I think we have a question here from Mr. Waddell.
Yes.
I may have missed it. So are we proposing to remove all of these pecan trees in preparation for laying the multi-use path?
That'll be part of the project. When the contractor gets out there, they'll be removed.
Because they're 30%, the root structure 30% affected.
Correct.
I think I'm with Charlie on this. These things are, I mean, they're resilient organisms. And I mean, just because 30% of the root structure is going to be affected, I realize the arborist saying it's probably not going to make it, but I mean, if we can do anything to save these, it's not going to adversely affect the project. You know, if they die 5 years down the road, that's 5 more years that we had them, right? Or maybe I'm jumping ahead and you're going to address this at some point.
Yeah, I have a few more slides that
Okay.
we'll talk about, but you can see from this cross-section here where the actual path is literally right in the trunk of that tree. It's not like it's
So it's not
3
just
or
the root
4
structure. It's gonna drive right through the trunk of all these pecans.
That's right. The pipe itself is down in the root structure, and we have to excavate and create obviously a trench to put that, but the path itself, which we've already reduced down to 8 feet from the typical 10 feet, is going to be right up and basically into the trunk of that tree.
And we couldn't utilize some of the flex that we see down on Front Street, you know, when we try to save some of these trees, or we plant and we put the flex, I don't know the actual material. And again, I can hold my comments till the
Yeah, no,
end,
that's
but
fine.
just, I mean, was that in consideration whatsoever? Was it cost prohibitive?
We have in all 3 of these corridors where we're doing on the Hooker, Hinton, there are locations where we're using the flexi-pave to kind of bridge over those, but typically that's where the path is a few feet offset from those trees, as opposed to this. You can see where literally probably the last foot or 2 of the path is right up on the tree. So, and you do have to still grade. You're going to be into those surface roots.
I'll have some more comments at the end, but
Okay.
I'm sorry for getting maybe a little premature.
No, that's
Thanks.
okay. Ask any questions. And what I'm going over here right now is what the design is now, and I'll try to address some of the questions that you have, like, well, what if we move this here? What if we move this? What the impacts are to the project. And here we go. So this slide is about the trail alignment. So as we just talked about, the trail as proposed, we're about 2.5 feet behind the curb because we need to maintain ADA compliance as we cross over those driveways. Their question came up, well, what if you try to shift that trail right up to the back side of the curb? Well, you could do that where this property has 5 different driveways on it. So that trail would zig and zag, you know, in between and make a very unpleasant ride for most people. But at the driveways, they do need to be pulled back for ADA compliance. But even if we did that, the trees would still be impacted by the storm pipes that we're talking about. The question came up about the trail, whether or not we can put it behind the trees. In order to make sure we're outside of that critical root zone, they're going to be extremely close to the front porches of those houses. And I could slide back later if you want and show you the images of how close those houses are to, I think there's 6 houses on that property, to the root zone area. The other question that came up was, why can't we put the trail on the opposite side of the street? We looked at that early on in the design. Would it save the trees? Yes, but there's multiple impacts over there. That includes an existing water line that requires an offset for the new storm drain. There's ADA grading issues because the properties on that side, the elevations are built up a lot higher. In order to maintain the ADA cross slope of the path, we'd have to cut into that property impact private property and potentially put in retaining walls. Also, the topography over there slopes towards the road. We have to put in, if we put in that path over there, we'll be trapping water behind the path, and we'd still have to put a parallel ditch system behind that trail. So not only do you have the 8-foot trail, then you have a ditch, and I haven't even talked about the overhead pole relocations on that side that would move back even further, and now you're going to be all over that property, and there'll be significant impacts and additional property acquisition.
When myself and Councilman Bardent and Councilman Waddell went out, that was the plan. The trail was along that side of the road all the way, was it not?
It was on that side just for a short run for the initial design before it was reevaluated several years ago, and some of it was changed. And it was changed because of those reasons that I just went over.
No, it was Hinton. It was on that side.
Yeah.
Well, both Hooper
right.
and Hinton got swapped around.
Right, that's
So,
correct.
Just to educate me, when we did Holly Tree, is there storm pipes underneath the trail on Holly Tree?
On Holly Tree, there was already a curb and gutter section out there with storm drain inlets. So if we're putting in, additional impervious and it's sloped, it's already being caught by the existing system that's there.
Okay.
This is a little different because we actually have to put in curb and gutter now, where that infrastructure was already there.
And that's required by us or DOT?
Well, it's not necessarily required, but what it does is there's another item we consider here to try to keep that. These are very narrow corridors. We're trying to keep the path as close to the street as possible. By having the curb and gutter and the vertical separation, that allows us to bring the path very close to the street. If you don't have that curb and gutter and vertical separation, there's a lot of guidelines. That path has to be at least 5 feet, if not more, further back based on the speed limits, and then you're starting to impact these properties even more.
And curb and gutter does away with all that?
It does, because it's considered a vertical separation, allows you to bring the path closer. Yep.
Luke?
I know I said I'd hold my comments till
That's
the end of
okay.
your presentation, but sorry. Stream of consciousness here. This trail as proposed, the second bullet point says if directly behind the curb, trees still impacted by storm pipes. Is that if the trail is directly behind the curb? So-
Yes.
But it doesn't address the point that you made that the path itself would cut straight through the tree. I think that's pretty important.
That's correct.
So that
Well,
trail as proposed, the actual,
The back edge of that trail is starting to get into the trunk of the tree. Yep.
okay.
And that was this cross section that I showed you before. Yep.
Every tree.
Yeah, if I go, sorry, I don't mean to jump around, but it's helpful.
That's my fault, yeah.
You can see, the center dots of all these circles. Those are basically the locations of the trunks of the trees. They're pretty much in line all the way down.
It's the blue line is the stormwater pipe,
It is.
and then we don't have the edge of the multi-use path along in this photo,
It's
do we?
in this one here. It's inside, I don't know if, yeah,
But
I
the
don't think I
trees
can get a
are-
cursor. It's basically right where those yellow dots are. That's the edge. But it was transferred to scale to this here that shows the edge of the trail right in that.
Yeah, but that's not every tree's not got the edge of the trail.
It's probably
Because if
with-
you go back, don't want
That's
to
okay.
belabor, but if you go back, you've got a couple trees that are, one more, sorry. You got a couple trees that are like within the trail, right? So the first, second, third,
Yeah, they're all probably within a foot or two of each other as far as offset from the road.
okay,
It's almost like when they were planted, they were purposely done that way in the
Sure.
right of way.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, carry on, thank you.
Now, the next slide, we kind of touch on the utility conflicts. That first one, we talked about the trail impacts. The storm pipe that's proposed now, we talked about, as designed, it's necessary for the drainage. We explained why, but it will also impact the critical root zone of the trees. Questions came up, well, why can't we also put the storm drain pipe behind the trees? Same situation. In order to get it outside of the critical root zone, we're going to have to go and get additional PDE, which is permanent drainage easement and put it extremely close to the houses. Also, pulling it back creates additional length for these pipes because it all works on gravity. We got to make sure the water's flowing. So with the additional length, adds additional depth. We looked at the calculations, and the deeper we go with the pipe there, it's not going to meet the crossing, the elevation at Greenville Ave. So therefore, that pipe will have to be removed and replaced and deepened, and it kind of has a domino effect as you go down the street.
I think Mr. Anderson has a question.
Yeah. Okay. And lastly, if the stormwater pipe is moved behind the trees, you have the pipe back there, but you're still going to have the stormwater boxes along the curb and gutter section, so you'll have those lateral pipes that have to go back and still get into the root system of those trees. Lastly, there was a question, I believe, about, well, why can't this stormwater pipe just get moved closer to the street, closer to the curb and gutter? There is an existing gravity sanitary sewer main that's out there right now, and we need to maintain 24 inches of separation to meet state statutes. It's a public health issue.
Right.
Lastly, here, as far as that property, the question came up about the health of these trees. At the start of the project, before we had it designed, we did walk that corridor. 3 of those trees were identified as in good health, and we would try, if we can design it around it, we would. We'd make that attempt, but there were some that were identified that were not in good health. These photos here are a couple pictures. One is the 26-inch pecan tree that you can see the trunk has split. It's hollowed out. There's some rotting occurring. The top of the canopy there has cracked and in poor shape. And there's also, in between all those pecan trees, there's a 24-inch sycamore, a rather large sycamore tree in there. You can see some of the same problems are happening in there. So it's not to say that all these trees are in poor health, but there are some issues with some of the trees out there. And just another point that, these trees are all in front of a property that we've already worked with the property owner, and they've accepted the offer, so they're ready to move forward with this project. I think a lot of these comments are coming from folks that are in the corridor.
Well, Neil, wait, I think Neil has some questions.
He does.
Just gonna, I figured at the end you're gonna, do we have a plan to, it looks like your recommendation is we've got to move you've explored every other option known that you can think of, and they need to be removed if we're going to build this trail.
That's correct.
So what do we have, so we're going to be left with this very narrow space. Is there something that we propose to plant back that would work in that space?
There currently is not room in that right-of-way to add trees of this caliper. I guess there is the option. We've been working on Hooker Road with the Heal the Waterways group, where some of these private property owners can request that there is some funds there for mitigation of trees because of the creek back there. I'm not sure if this is close enough to qualify for that, but the challenge is where these trees would have to be planted back is on private property.
Well, I know I had some, at least a long time ago, planted in the right-of-way in front of my home, the city did. If we had approval from the private property owners, could we plant on their property, or is that just something we just don't touch for legal reasons or whatever?
Yeah, I honestly, I would have to go back and look into that and check to see if that's something we could do. I know as far as this project, though, it is federally funded with FHWA and DOT funds, so I don't think that would be covered under those funds, so we'd also have to find additional funds to do that.
Tree mitigation funds somewhere. I'm just saying, let's think out of the box here. Let's try to find a way to put some cover back that'll grow back over time and work with the neighbors. Heck, I don't know. The neighbors may say, I don't want to eat trees. I can't imagine that, but they might. But let's explore it somehow. I don't know. The staff would know better than I do how, the options, but I hope we'll look into that.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Mr. Rivenbark?
The reason I wanted this explanation given tonight in front of, I hope people are watching, is because when we get these calls, they're like us when we see the plans. Why can't we do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? Why can't we let the trail meander to save trees? Why can't we, why can't we do this and that? And when I get the explanations, I hear it and then I say, well, why can't we do it this way? And I get what you're saying, but I just want to impress upon people that are out there or watching, from where I sit, and I think everybody else who agree, we do everything we can to try to save these things. And I know there's a magnolia on Country Club Road that's been there for 100 years, and you could camp in it. It's got such a big hollowed out hole, and it ain't going nowhere. So, trees are amazing things. They keep pushing those leaves out every year. And so I just, pecan trees, they're nice, they feed wildlife and stuff like that. And it'll change the appearance of that 400-foot section, which is sad to me. But it looks as though you've tried every possible way in the world. I'll tell you, I told Bill we need to take this project out and shoot it, But anyway, thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for the effort that you guys, the staff has put into trying to satisfy or meet some of the requirements of those neighbors. I really appreciate the diligence that you guys have placed in it, and I'm ready for us to go to work, okay? So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any other questions for staff?
Mike, when at some end or some corner or something, do we scratch dirt here?
I'm glad you asked that question.
6 months, a year, 10 years from now? Okay, there you go. Thank you.
I thought someone might ask that question. So we are in October right now. We have basically completed property acquisition. Our project manager, Rachel, is compiling all that information to send it over to NCDOT. They need to give us certification that they're satisfied that we've acquired all the properties. Then we can start moving forward with the bid process. So what that will be is probably, if we get that over and get the approval next month, we can petition DOT to make sure we get our construction fund authorization, which is part of the supplemental funding that you guys are hopefully approving tonight. And then we can go ahead and advertise bids. We'll bring it to City Council, hopefully after the new year. We can get the DOT construction award concurrence. It's a lot of information to basically say we hope to be able to have this under construction by February. That'll take 9 months to get construction complete by October 2024, and then we'll slide right in with our federal funding deadline at the end of the calendar year in 2024. Yeah, all three locations, Hooker Road Trail, Hinton Ave Trail, and the improvements on Greenville Avenue.
Great, thank you. Mike, are there any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, what are the wishes of council? We are going to vote on 01A, which is a resolution. I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark, a second by Mr. Barnett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously. Now we can vote on 01B, which is the ordinance. We have a motion by Mr. Barnett and a second by Mr. Rivenbark. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now we'll go to a similar
Madam
item,
Mayor
but
Pro Tem, we'll need to, is there a motion to
oh,
waive
that was
second
an
reading?
ordinance. I need a motion to waive second reading. I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark, a second by Mr. Anderson. If we'll vote, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll go to 02A, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a supplemental agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept $339,840 in additional service transportation block grant direct attributable funds with a required local match of $84,960 for the Hinton Avenue multi-use path project. And I assume that that presentation also applies to this. So if there are no further questions, what are the wishes of council? We have a motion by Mr. Barnett, a second by Mr. Waddell. All in favor of that signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. That was the resolution. Now to the ordinance, which is 02B. The ordinance is making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $424,800 for the Hinton Avenue Multi-Use Path Project in the Streets and Sidewalks Fund. I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark, a second by Mr. Waddell. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and it is an ordinance. So if there's a motion to waive second reading, I have a motion by Mr. Waddell and a second by Mr. Barnett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that also passes unanimously on first and second reading. The next item is 03A. That's a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a supplemental agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to accept $328,080 in additional service transportation block grant direct attributable funds with the required local match of $82,020 for the Wrightsville Avenue, Greenville Avenue intersection improvement projects. And I'll read 03B, which is the ordinance making supplemental appropriation in the amount of $410,100 for the Wrightsville Avenue, Greenville Avenue intersection improvements project in the Streets and Sidewalks Fund. At this time, I'll recognize our Deputy Manager, Mary Vigue.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This item was also covered with the last presentation.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So, the wishes of council, I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark, a second by Mr. Barnett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Now we can vote on 03B, which is the ordinance. And the wishes of council. I have a motion by Mr. Barnett, a second by I have a motion by Mr. Rivenbark and a second by Mr. Barnett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that also passes unanimously. Is there a motion to waive second reading? I have a motion by Mr. Waddell, a second by Mr. Spears. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That also passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That's it.
Brings us to our resolutions. Item R1 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements to provide fire services beyond the city of Wilmington's territorial jurisdiction. At this time, I'd like to recognize Deputy City Manager, Ms. Vigue.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Mason will overview this item for council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I would like to share with you some of the details about our request for the city manager to enter into an automatic aid agreement with Leland and Wrightsville Beach. So just a little bit of statistics here. We currently have mutual aid agreements existing with both agencies that actually go back to 1986. So we currently request resources back and forth from these two agencies as they do with us. The automatic aid agreement in both of these situations is limited, and it just streamlines the process should they or we need resources from them. As you can see from the statistics, we've provided 11 mutual aid responses to Leland. 4 of those were for fires, 4 were for standbys to cover their territory, and 3 times we were canceled. In 2023, Leland has provided us with 3 mutual aid responses, and occasionally they have stood by at headquarters while our units have been out working multiple incidents or large incidents such as the Greystone and the Starway flea market fires, just to name a few. We have responded to Wrightsville Beach over 77 times in the last 20 months. Looking at those responses, our Chief of Operations, Chief Mickler, actually worked with Chief Haraway at Wrightsville Beach to determine what calls we really should be going to so we minimize that significantly. And in 2022, Wrightsville Beach provided us assistance 21 times, and that does not include standbys. The proposed changes that we are looking to do, there essentially would be no mutual aid changes to the current mutual aid agreement. The Town of Leland automatic aid agreement would include a single ladder truck to be dispatched only for commercial structure fires. In exchange, Leland would also offer us an additional ladder truck responding to the downtown area in the event that we have a working commercial structure fire down here. With the additional multi-story buildings that we have, an additional ladder truck added to our response would be beneficial to us and our citizens. So that is a back and forth type of agreement there. The Town of Wrightsville Beach, again, no changes to the mutual aid agreement there. The automatic aid would also be reciprocal. Truck 81, which is a ladder truck, would essentially be coming into zones 9 and 10 around Landfall and the Greenville Avenue area. We have a gap in there for ladder coverage, and we are seeing a number of multi-story buildings being built in that area. So we know we have existing ladder coverage issues there. Wrightsville Beach, through this automatic aid agreement, would send their ladder truck across the bridge and support our responses to that area. In the event that Wrightsville Beach has a working structure fire as it stands now, they have to request us through mutual aid, and of course we go and we provide them aid. If we were not able to do this through through an automatic aid process, they would pull units from county fire, stations 14, 16, and 17, which basically means those units have to come through the city running emergency traffic. That would not only create additional risk to the citizens of Wilmington, but it also creates delays in getting an effective response force to the beach. So it's for those reasons that we feel like this is a good win-win situation for both agencies. And again, our incident commander has the ability to deny aid if we cannot support that at any given point in time. To answer Councilman Waddell's question the other day with regards to operational effectiveness. So we do maintain control over our resources regardless of when we're called. I also wanted to follow up with you, Councilman Rivenbark. Leland has a split rating, a combination of a 4-10. So in the city limits, I guess, of Leland, where they have their fire stations and the homeowners are within a 5-mile radius of their fire stations, they enjoy a Class 4 rating. For those who are outside the 5 miles from a fire station, they have a Class 10 rating. So I wanted to follow up with your question yesterday. And that is essentially what we are looking for here. I just wanted to provide you probably a little bit too much in the weeds, but I did want to kind of give you some ideas about why we are doing this. And I'll be certainly happy to answer any further questions you may have about our request.
Steve, real quick, just curiosity, on the bridge, when there's an accident, I know when we roll up to it and we get up to a certain point of the bridge, it splits over into Brunswick County.
Yes, sir.
How far over, does mutual aid, depending on where the accident takes place, if it's on their side or our side, or how does that work?
Well, a lot of times when you're based on where you are and you actually dial 911, it may hit Brunswick County's dispatch center or it may hit New Hanover County's dispatch center. And so based on the address given by the caller, sometimes it's a toss-up and both agencies will be dispatched, or even occasionally New Hanover County will be dispatched from up 421 as well. And so it's kind of like the first person that gets there identifies, where it is, and they usually take care of it regardless of whose district it is.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Mr. Waddell?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. This is probably just for my edification. I'm still familiarizing myself with some of the mutual aid stuff. But so we already had mutual aid with Leland.
Yes, sir.
Prior to this. This is just an amendment to the automatic aid.
They are two separate types of aid, but to answer your question, yes, we have had a mutual aid agreement with Wrightsville Beach, with Brunswick County, with Pender County, and in fact, we have state mutual aid agreements with almost anywhere in the state of North Carolina through requests. Mutual aid means that the incident commander or the fire chief or his designee in a district like Leland or Pender would have to call and request units from Wilmington or anywhere else they're requesting mutual aid. Automatic aid is essentially when the call comes in, the units are automatically dispatched. So there does not have to be any formal ask for you to send units.
So, God forbid a commercial fire breaks out in Leland, we automatically send a ladder truck to Leland?
We would, if we enter into an automatic aid agreement with them, yes. And what I was showing you earlier is, there was a picture up there, and one of those was an example that we had of a fire back in August that Leland requested us for a commercial structure fire. And so we sent a battalion chief and a ladder truck and an engine over there, if I remember correctly.
Same thing happens over here. They
Yes, sir.
send same thing.
Yep, downtown, we can request units for them to come down here, cover our stations, or supplement our firefighting forces. And the same goes for Riceville Beach
Right.
as well.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Rodenbach?
When a town builds a 10, 12-story building, do they have to, is it a prerequisite by the planning staff in that particular municipality that the fire department has to have the adequate firefighting equipment to reach those upper floors, or does that depend on mutual aid?
It is part of the fire code. If we have buildings that meet that, we have to be able to provide that type of response. So if it's above 75 feet, it falls into what we call a high-rise category, and you need to have a ladder truck that can respond within 2.5 miles.
Do these outlying communities have all that?
No, sir, not to the degree that we do. And it varies, and that's why their ISO ratings vary based on their ability to provide fire protection to any of those buildings. But it also has to do with fire flows with their water system, their training, their staffing. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things that go into it. But generally speaking, they need to be able to provide a ladder truck within 2.5 miles of that business or that multi-story building or apartment complex.
I would think it would be a kind of a stretch to get any type of insurance on that building when they go to construction or whatever, if they can't
Yes, sir.
prove that they've got adequate firefighting to handle a 10th floor.
Yes, sir.
Whatever.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's why it's so important for us to, like have identified this area in Station 10's area, the Oleander eastern part of the city, if you will, where we know we have a gap in our ladder coverage right now. And the number of multi-story apartment buildings that are going up on Oleander Drive and commercial buildings, we know that that's only going to get exacerbated. Thankfully, we have good fire codes and residential sprinklers and all of that, but should a fire break out in one of those buildings, they are extremely resource intensive.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Chief, thank you. It's a great explanation, and I'm supportive of what you're asking for. I'll have to admit, you have piqued my interest in the 77 calls to Wrightsville Beach over less than 2 years. Are these like emergency, medical calls, or are these, I mean, I know they haven't had 77 fires.
No, ma'am. I actually have Chief Mickler here, who's our Chief of Operations, and can probably give you some very good detail on that, much more
Okay,
than
I don't want to prolong it, but I mean, that it seems exorbitant.
Evening. So fire alarms, some motor vehicle accidents, and those are the ones that we removed off of there. So now we're just focusing more on like actual structure fires or like high-risk type fires.
Okay, so your 77 calls, the majority of them were motor vehicle accidents or?
The majority were fire alarms, so
Oh,
like
fire
commercial or
alarms.
residential fire alarms or hotel fire alarms that we were going over there for. And so I worked with Chief Haraway to remove all of those.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Rodenbach.
There was a period of time where fire alarms really caused a lot of heartburn.
Yes, sir.
False alarms.
Yes, sir.
When would somebody throw a bottle against a building, it would set it off, and there was a fairly significant fine for that.
Yes, yes, sir. We still
Is
find.
that still the practice?
Typically, what we find for are nuisance alarms, so after the third time.
They fix it.
If it was a system malfunction or something wrong with the system, then our fire marshal's office does cite for those type of calls.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Any questions for Chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
What are the wishes of council? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Anderson, second by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. Brings us to our next item of business, which is item R2, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to exercise the second and final contract extension and increase the contract amount by $4,800,000 for the annual needs roadway maintenance contract with Highland Paving Company LLC of Fayetteville, North Carolina. This time I'd like to recognize Deputy City Manager, Ms. Viggie.
Dave Mays, our Public Services Director, will overview this item for council.
Excuse me. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a resolution to extend our contract for one final year out of their 3-year term with Highland Paving, and also to add $4.8 million to the contract amount. I think it's important that we take a look back at what we've been able to do with this contract and also with the investment that y'all have approved through capital funds for roadway maintenance. So I'm going to be talking strictly about what we've been able to achieve in the past 2 calendar years, 22 and 23. First of all, a little bit of history on the street rehab funding that we've seen. Over the past 3 years have been really stellar years in terms of the amount of funding going towards street rehab. And the trend line there, going across the document, across the chart, shows you the amount of investment that we're putting into trying to improve our streets, specifically lately. A little bit of background, the city owns just over 400 centerline miles or 800 lane miles of streets within the city. We use the pavement condition index as a rating system to kind of keep track of the condition of our roads. The 4 primary techniques that we use for maintaining our roads include pavement rejuvenation, pavement preservation, microsurfacing or overlay, and also milling and resurfacing. The resources that we have available to us, the most important resource that we have to get this work done is this contract. We've been able to maximize our efficiency in getting asphalt out onto the ground through this annual needs style of contract. We also have in-house staff, and we're fully capable of going out and resurfacing a street with our in-house equipment. They don't do as much, and they do more smaller work that's not necessarily attractive for a larger contractor to do. Both are very critical resources to have, considering the variety of work that we try to achieve. So let's talk about each one of these techniques. Pavement rejuvenation, you've heard me describe that as sunscreen for asphalt. This is basically a chemical application that we apply to streets that are in a healthier condition, usually less than 5 years old. The intent here is really to extend the overall life of the pavement and reduce that deferred maintenance. So this is a plan for us to help preserve that street for a longer period of time and save those future maintenance costs. In 22 and 23, we treated 82.4 lane miles at a total cost of about $850,000. That's a $10,250 cost per lane mile. So it's a fairly effective, cost-effective method to keep our roads healthy. Pavement preservation. We use, basically it's a slurry seal product. This is not just a chemical application. This is an actual application of a product that stays as a coating on top of the road. Again, this is applied to roads that have a higher level pavement condition index. It is also designed to extend the overall life of the pavement and reduce that deferred maintenance cost. In 22 and 23, we were able to complete a little over 46 lane miles for a total cost of $1.3 million. And again, it's a very cost-effective means of maintaining a road at $28,000 per lane mile.
Dave, can
Yes,
I ask
sir.
you, on these last 2 processes, the slurry and the reclamite?
Yes, sir.
Is there any milling done on those streets before those 2 things? It's just laid right over?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The next technique is microsurfacing or overlay. We also look at this as if it is a preservation technique. However, it has the effect of looking like a brand new street. This is a thin overlay on top of the existing pavement. It's typically applied to roads with a higher PCI. It may require some pavement repair underneath the surface before you do an overlay. We were able to do about 10 lane miles in '23, for a total cost of $1.1 million. And again, this is a fairly cost-effective means too, quite simply because you don't have the expense of milling and you pay for about half the amount of asphalt. That's why. Lastly, the most intense work that we do is when we go out and mill and resurface streets, either 2 or 3 inches in depth usually. For local streets, we target streets that have a PCI of less than 60, and for collectors, it's a PCI of less than 70. By the end of this calendar year, we will have done about 38.5 lane miles within the city. Total cost of that was just under $9 million, and you can see that's our most expensive technique, about $232,000 per lane mile. So over the past 2 calendar years, we've got a total investment of a little over $12 million. This is one of the first efforts that we've had that's been this significant at preservation techniques. You wouldn't necessarily go out and buy a car without planning on changing the oil. Well, think about preservation as changing the oil. We don't want to wait and maintain our vehicles until the engine's ready to fall out. We want to keep them healthy, and that's what this funding is about. With those efforts, in '22 and '23, we were able to touch and perform some level of street maintenance on 22% of all the lane miles that we have, and I think that's pretty significant. Upcoming for next calendar year, you're very familiar with our work to try and get Fifth Avenue between Market and Greenfield repaved. We're about 3 months behind on schedule, waiting on the utility authority to get ahead with their contractor. Their bids open this week for their work, so we'll be following behind that in a month or so with our project going out to bid. We've also prepared a bid for some concrete street repair work, and that'll be bid in the coming months as well. We just began our efforts to begin developing our 2024 paving plan, so that should be prepared by middle of November. And we will also initiate procurement process for our new pavement or updated pavement management study in 2024. So we're going to hire a consultant in 2024 to do an update. They'll survey the entire city, capture new data for new pavement condition index numbers. We'll have that report ready probably sometime early in the calendar year of 2025.
Dave, is that, we used to have this list that was in colors like green and yellow and red. Is that what you're talking about, that we would get is that current list online somewhere or anything? How would somebody see that? Because we're asked all the time, when are they coming to my street or my neighborhood or whatever. And I always found that to be really helpful.
We have online on the city website, we do have access to a web map that shows not the number, like not the pavement condition index number, but a verbal description of the pavement condition, good, fair, poor, and it also includes what work we know is scheduled, which is usually 1 year out.
Yeah, that's good. That color-coded thing was good because it delineated which ones were good, which ones were in line to be fixed. So if it's 5 years down the road, then they'll quit asking, about it. So anyway, I think that's really a very effective tool.
This is our map, the city's public-facing map. But if we can look into making that information available by list if need be.
It might be easier for the average person than this, but thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
Dave, just clarify, I think it was one of your very first slides, you don't need to go back to it, but it had the graph thing. It looked like we went from 6 to 8 million. Is that just resurface? That's like the full resurfacing? And then, then you said 12.2 And that's the slurry and all the other stuff. Is that accurate?
Forgive me, I'm not quite following you.
Dylan, go back to, it was his very first slide. Right there. See, it looks like to me from that graph, from 23 to 24, we're going from 6 to 8 million.
Yeah, yes, sir, that's correct. It did.
And that's full-scale street rehab versus, and then you mentioned 12.2, that delta is all the slurry and other stuff you call changing oil.
Yeah, the 12.2 references the amount of investment that we've actually been able to realize in actual work that's landed on the street. This graph right here represents your efforts to fund that. The 12.2 number is actually, by the end of this calendar year, we will have invested $12.2 million over the past 2 years in total amount through this contract in pavement on the street.
So,
including the rejuvenation.
how did we spend 8 and get 12?
Well,
We had stuff carry over from prior years, or?
there's some of that. There's also planning for the work that we are getting ready to bid, like Fifth Avenue. Some of that money is held in reserve, so when we have that bid, we've got the money in the bank to be able to award the contract.
Okay, so this was our funding for those 2 years, but we actually did over 12
Yes, sir.
in actual. Okay, thank you.
Dave, how are we doing with Powell bill money? How is that affecting all these numbers?
Powell bill money doesn't directly affect these numbers. Powell bill is worked into our budget, and it helps fund the services, funds for like staffing, in-house staffing and equipment to do street work. It doesn't necessarily go into the bank and say, here, use it for street rehab. It helps fund the services that we
It's kind of a
provide.
misnomer, because it leaves Raleigh saying it's, Powell bill road money. So, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. That brings us to item R3, which is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreement surplus property to the North Carolina State Ports Authority. This time I'd like to recognize City Manager, Deputy City Manager, Ms. Vicky.
Thank you, Mayor. Our City Attorney Meredith Everhart will overview this item for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I would like to present to you Mr. Spears' favorite subject of Willard Street. Now that we have bought the property, we have declared that the road, we have merged the road together to the property, we've surplused all the property, and so now this item is to give staff direction on what to do with the property. And after we obtained ownership to the property, the North Carolina Ports Authority expressed interest in the property. We have several ways that we can dispose of the property. They wanted to ask us to engage in a direct negotiated sale with them, and because they're a state entity, we are allowed to do that. So the purpose of this resolution is to allow the city manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreement. You do have a substitute motion on the dais in front of you that will clarify that before this sale actually goes through, the final details of that sale will come back to council ahead of time so that you will know the exact price and all the other material details of that sale. They are still being worked out now. There will be a due diligence period that's involved, and during the course of that purchase and sale agreement, it'll be part of that PSA that this will have to be approved, the final details, by both the Council of State on behalf of the ports and by City Council. So this is to allow the negotiations to begin as far as how we're going to dispose of the property by private sale. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Mr. Waddell?
So the actual purchase price will come back before us?
Yes, sir.
At a later date?
Yes, sir.
This is just us agreeing that we want to dispose of the property to the port in a private sale manner?
Yes, sir, and allow us to begin the due diligence period and those negotiations.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by.
I'll make a motion for the substitute
Substitute-
resolution.
This is substitute motion.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, ma'am,
To the
thank you.
resolution.
yes.
Excuse me?
He accepted the
Okay,
friendly
very good.
amendment. Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Haynes, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our last item of business, which is item R4, which is a resolution authorizing city manager to enter into an agreement with the Starway Village LLC for $750,000 gap financing for affordable workforce rental housing. At this time, I'd like to recognize Deputy City Manager Mary Bigu.
Suzanne Rogers, our Community Development and Housing Planner, will overview this item for council.
Thank you, Ms. Vigu, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. You have before you a resolution requesting $750,000 in additional gap funding for the Starway project. As you are aware, affordable housing is a critical issue in our community. 52% of renters in our community are housing cost burden, and the City-County Commission DeBowen report indicates that we have a gap of over 4,000 rental units that we'll need in the next 10 years. City Council has previously approved $3.5 million in your ARPA funds for this project, as well as approving application and the receipt of $9 million in state North Carolina Office of Resiliency and Recovery funds for this project. The additional gap funding is required due to the unprecedented increase in interest rates that is impacting the real estate industry as a whole. This project will provide 278 units of affordable rental housing for households earning 60% of the area median income or below at very affordable rents. It's a $75 million project at this point and will leverage $61.5 million in additional funding outside of what the city and county have put in it into our community in equity, private debt, and other bond funding. I'm happy to answer any questions, and also the developer is here if you have any questions for him. Thank you.
Mr. Waddell?
Is this gap financing, Suzanne, is this coming out of the 1.5 allocated in the budget for affordable housing?
Yes, sir, it is. It's coming out of the general funds appropriated by council for gap financing in FY23.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
I know I asked you this yesterday morning, but can you, how much of all of this is loans or most of it's loans? Can you kind of just break that down?
Sure. So of the money that the city and county have approved for the project, the $9 million from Encore is a loan. The $3.5 million is a loan, and the county's money is a loan. A major portion of the ARPA funds from the city and county went towards the acquisition of the property, and that is already closed.
That was more like grant funding. I mean, that was a gift, correct, or is that?
No, that's a loan.
That's what?
A loan.
Oh, it is a loan also? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And just like I said yesterday, this demonstrates the city, the county, the state, and the developer all working together, and how hard it has been to produce 200-some units of affordable housing, which, by the way, is the largest affordable housing project ever done that I'm aware of in the city's history, correct?
Correct, sir.
And so it just demonstrates the hard work that goes into this, and any kind of adjustment in interest rates or price of materials can take the project down the tubes. And that's just why we're back here today and making this adjustment with the rates in a rate interest increasing environment. So I just want to commend everybody for staying at the table to make this happen. This is how important affordable housing is to this council and to the community, and we understand that, but I also want the community to understand how difficult it is. And without the support of local and state governments and even federal government, it's going to be difficult to get any of this stuff done. So it's not going to be done all by the private sector by itself. It just cannot be. But if we can work together in this kind of manner, you can make it happen. But it is difficult.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, we have the name, the word developer sometimes carries a bad connotation to it, but developers built everything that we live in, that we shop at. I mean, they built it all. And this developer, a lot of developers, I think, facing the uphill battle he did would have probably just thrown in the towel and left, and this one didn't. And I'm telling you what, that's going to be a beautiful project out there, and I wish we had them lined up down that aisle coming to do the same thing.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What are the wishes of council? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That item passes unanimously. Congratulations. This concludes the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney? Deputy City Manager?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk? Mr. Waddell? Mr. Barnett?
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, I actually have two items. The first item is this week we lost a very champion in our city, Sister Linda Pierce. She passed away on, this picture is when I filed on July 7th, 2017. She poured into me and encouraged me, and I'm literally sitting here because she pushed me and had, I guess, something that she saw in me that would allow me to do what I'm doing now. So I share this picture to say to her family and to say to the community, we will miss her, and we thank her for all that she's doing for us. And then also, I want to take from her example and have us pour into each other. You know, we need more adults to cheer at kids' games and just push kids and encourage them so that they can do great things like that. That's number one. And then the second thing, a personal privilege, on Sunday, October the 15th, Warner Temple, the church that I pastor, will be burning its mortgage. And we're having a celebration at 1 o'clock, and you all are invited to come. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Rivenbark, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Spears.
I too want to reiterate the sentiments of Councilman Barnett about Linda Pierce Thomas, great lady, strong woman, pillar of our community. I was sitting here thinking, she was always watching the city council meeting. And when I met her, you know, she had the community created this tough persona about her. And she was so humble when I first met her. I went to her home when I decided to run for city council. And she said, I don't know why people say I have so much power. I don't. But she definitely did. So the city has taken a huge loss in losing Linda Pierce Thomas. I also want to say we are 16 days away from early voting. Check your voter registration. Make sure you have a valid ID. If you don't remember where your precincts are, early vote. That'll be the key. Get it done during early voting. We need everybody to come out. I won't say it doesn't matter who you vote for. You know who I'm rooting for. But we want to see a huge amount of participation from the citizens of the city of Wilmington. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And I also want to just say, on behalf of the city, our condolences to Linda for great work and public, her public service to the community. A lot of people don't realize, but she ran Elder House for many, many years in our community and served the public and started Elder House and helped a lot of the senior citizens in our community when they desperately needed it, and it's grown into a great organization. So with that, thank you for taking interest in your government. We stand adjourned.